I'm here with Lincoln from Melomotive, and he's come down to give us a hand with the car. He's going to give us a few tips. We got the car in poly primer in the last episode. What are we going to get into now? What's the first thing?
So first thing, we're going to look over the car with the splines. We're going to check to see if these surfaces are running through. If not, we may have to adjust the doors slightly, because we don't want to be sanding away and finding out that we're not lined up correctly. So we'll have a look through that, check the surface with these, then we'll be putting some sticky back sandpaper on, lightly sanding. The goal is to get rid of any little imperfections that are in the surface, really refining it at this stage. You've got about 400 microns of film build from the poly primer. So that's actually a fair bit. That's more than double your traditional 2K primer. So we should be able to work it with the 120 and try to get this thing looking really good.
You were saying that having all your doors and everything lined up before you start getting into the sanding stage. Now, for anyone at home that is attempting to do filler work, what's the way of going about setting everything up?
Ideally, we want all the doors set up perfectly. We want the weight on the wheels, as we've got, but we want the rubbers in, the check links, the latches, strikers, everything set up. And we spend a bit of time getting that right. And looks like you've done a half decent job there, well done.
Thank you.
So we want all this flowing through, because the better this is all lined up, the less filler we need and the easier our job becomes. So it is worth spending a fair bit of time at the start, checking that that's in its best possible position to save a lot more time down the track. So what we're looking for daylight in between that spline. So when we slide this spline up, if we're seeing lots of daylight there, then it means that surface is low. So through here, you've done an amazing job. That looks really good. When we start sanding, we may see a tiny bit, you can see already, the spline is scratching. Essentially it's leaving here. It's touching all through here. It's touching here. There's an ever so slight low there, but that's hardly anything. With the film build we've got from the poly primer, we'll be able to sand that through straight away. So like what we were discussing, we want the rubbers on when we're surfacing this through. Unfortunately, we don't have the rubbers. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna create a hard point here, just with filler. We can take it off later, but what it'll do is when we line these doors up, it'll stop it from moving around when we're sanding it. Looks ugly, but it'll stop the door from moving. Now we just let the filler go off, and that'll create a nice bump stop for us where it's not going to move anymore. We've now got a nice solid surface through here. We're not going to push hard when we're sanding, but if we do push too hard, the door can't go in too far. We've created a bump stop. So what we're going to do, we're going to focus on getting this area flowing through. Got to be careful not to go up into this negative, because we can sand some grooves into there. But you see 120 on the spline. Now I'm going to be sanding very lightly. I can still manipulate the spline if I push too hard, but by sanding lightly, it's going to work like a guide coat. It's going to show us any imperfections. Now one thing I should do, we're going to get a bit of dust, so I'll just put an RZ dust mask on. So you can see I'm not pushing very hard at all. Everything's actually flowing through pretty well. You can see any spots that are ever so slightly lower are not getting sanded, but we just keep going like this, staying away from this area, staying away from the top here. It looks good.
And this is where it's my turn, and I have never done any sanding like this before. I did a little bit last time, but still not enough to know what I was doing. I definitely underestimated how hard sanding a car is. It is definitely an art form, but learning how to do this the correct way is another skill checked off my list.
So now move along a bit. We're not treating it as one door, one guard. It's one surface all the way through. Just be careful not to dig into this area.
Watching this back, I can already see that I was spending way too much time in the same spot. But after spending the day with Lincoln and knowing what I now know, I can see what I was doing wrong and what I should have done to do better. I did continue to go over the same spot for quite a while, and I did not realize at the time, but all I was really trying to do was get that low spot out.
Okay, so if you do see some of these lower spots, don't try to sand them out, because then you'll distort the surface. All we're trying to do is just sand it all the way through, and they'll naturally either come out by bringing these surfaces down, or we may have to fill, but we've definitely got enough film build. That's looking really good.
So do I keep hitting that X section? Or?
Yeah, so I'll have a bit of a sand again.
This is where Lincoln was showing me how he's moving across the whole side. He's not just focusing on one area like I was, and he's also doing the cross hatching back and forth on a 45-degree angle. Once I learned not to sand out those low sections, I was moving around a lot more and it made it way better.
So you want to use that section, not go around that. You want to just stay above that second.
Correct, because the surface is now changing at this curve.
Yeah.
We want to get all this surface right, then we'll move down to other areas.
So is that line that you're talking about?
Yeah, so naturally, the spline will start to create a bit of a line through here, which is where the surface is transitioning. We don't want the spline to roll down. We're not worried about this part yet. We're just focusing on that.
Yeah, okay. So do I need to keep going like lower but not rolling?
Yeah, you don't exactly. You don't want to roll it. So what we're trying to do, if we're pushing lightly, this will create the line. See, we started to create the line here. We can see. This is not lying. It's going to tell us exactly what's happening. We're still a little bit low here, fraction low here. That's why we want this nice firm spline to really show us.
Yes, yeah.
These imperfections are tiny, but you will be able to see it in the final paintwork.
So do I keep going at that to try and get that lower?
Yeah, so we haven't sanded that much through here. I think we've still got a fair bit of product through here.
Yeah.
So yeah, don't try to sand that out, but just keep sanding this area and it should happen naturally.
Yeah, I started taking
Yeah,
out.
you see you've taken a lot off now.
Yeah.
That's looking really good. Now keep moving further back along the door as well.
Yeah.
Remember, you don't want
Go one
to
spot.
focus on one area, you're focusing on that whole rectangle.
Yeah.
Yep, now go all the way through to the back of the door as well. So it looks like you got the hang of that. So it's looking really good. And you could see those slight wipe marks where the filler was wiped in.
Yep.
But that's why we want a higher build poly primer. Because
So you can sand through
just
that.
with a quick sand, you've got rid of that. So I think we move on to, you got the hang of that, we'll move on to the far more complex shape up the top now.
Yep.
And yeah, try to talk through that. So we spent a bit of time working out where this negative surface is. We're now going to treat this surface, then we'll do the negative. Far more complex area than what we've been sanding. This is the reason we have a car like this for our advanced spline course. It is very difficult to get these areas right, but I'm sure Tate will nail it.
So we're trying to get all of the low spots and getting the right line with this tape. We've got the guide to kind of follow the line that we want to go through.
So just be mindful you're not digging in like that. You want to, keep it flat, yep.
Well, because like there's a bit of a bow in that.
Yeah, so I wouldn't say that's a bow, that's where it's starting to speed up a bit.
Yeah.
So yeah, your block, if you keep sanding, your block will think that's a high spot.
Yeah.
It's not, it's where the surface is actually changing a bit. So it's probably best to sand up to this area,
and
then we'll use a different spline that's more flexible for this part. So now do the same thing with that.
This wall.
Yep. So now you're going to do it from this point here where you found that it was transitioning.
Yeah.
And you'll probably do it from that point there.
Yep.
So start with this one. Exact same thing, but now you're sanding forward. And this one I'd probably find easier sanding up to the tape.
Okay.
To see how you've taken more off here than you have here, which is hard because it does have that, it's still got a bit of a shape there. But I think sanding this way, and remember we're starting to speed off here, so we don't want to wrap around there. Does that make sense?
Yeah. So because that has a bit more of a curve in it than around there, are you doing any more like on the edge?
So I'm slightly.
Yeah.
Yes, so I'm slightly through there.
Okay.
Because technically...
You don't want to take off too much of that edge. If you
no, well I don't want to bring this down
Yeah.
to sand into there.
Yeah.
But we can see we've got this part here.
Yeah.
See how this is
Yeah.
lifting up? So I'm not going to try to sand that, but I'm going to see if that is something, yeah? Or if that's just where the transition is. Yes, that's alright. Still a little bit here, but that'll be fine. So yeah, you do the same here.
Yep.
You don't want to dig in, but you also don't want to roll over. I'd still probably come from underneath now. Yeah. I'd come from that angle there. Pretty much try to keep the spline at the same angle as the tape. So the tricky part is we're going to now have three distinct shapes. We're going to have this one, and this one.
Yeah.
So blending those three together does become tricky. I think you've got the hang of what's needed through there. Yeah. I think we'll grab the spline and try to work the top surface now. That's here. And then it actually opens up and gets bigger and runs all the way through to here where that starts to accelerate. So we've got to treat all that as one surface. Again, just lightly, very lightly to see. We don't want to waste the shine that's on the polyfiber. So we have to be careful because there is a shape happening here.
Yep.
So we've got to be careful there not to
Get into that area.
to see out.
Yeah.
All the way to about here. Just keep sanding the way I am. We're not rocking over the top here.
Yep.
But yeah, everything else, all this is going to stand out, not a problem. Up here you were, but you still want to, when I say 45s, you probably want to bias it a little bit forward. You're going all right, just not real straightforward. You still want to be in that upward motion a little bit and then changing around. But you want to, the surface is no longer doing this, the surface is doing this. So use that tape line essentially as, where you're starting and stopping with your spline. And again, you're focusing just on this area. You've got to do the whole. You can do a couple of passes here. Now move along this way. And try not to run the spline over the tape too much, because then that'll mean that part's digging in. So we're trying to work, see like that? So I am probably, with my thumbs, pushing a little bit, so that the top's not, the top's not really doing heaps. I don't want to, I'm not cutting into it like a knife, but I do want to have that little bit extra pressure on the bottom part when I'm on that angle anyway. That's it, there, yep. Can I just have a look at something? I'm just trying to work out the way. Yeah, so I'm actually using that part of my hands to push as well. So on this, see how far apart my finger and thumb are? And now I'm using this part and that part to push. Yeah? So even if I am pushing too hard, I've now got 4 points pretty much evenly spread on the spline that are standing. So that's probably doing the most of it. one of those things that I just do. I don't realise. That's why I had to grab it off here to check. Yeah, again, whatever's comfortable for you, but yeah, how you had, that's the way I like it, yep. Yeah. And then, yeah, I'm pushing here, pushing here, pushing here, pushing here. Not hard, but just, that's where the pressure is. Does that feel different now?
Yeah, I feel well.
Okay, be careful of where that's feeding on. You're all good. No, it might come through. You might be fine. Yeah, so you got a point. Yeah, you got a point about here.
Yeah.
Yeah, but really, if you look now, his front hand's not even holding the tape, it's just those fingers that are pushing down against it. You're not really holding the tape anymore, are you?
No.
It's just there to, you're pushing down with it on there, but it's not, yeah, you're not like this anymore. It's a lot more comfortable that way. That exact angle that you're on, keep coming all the way through. We want to just sand it. You're not focusing on trying to remove that, you're not focusing on removing that, you're just sanding.
But are you saying like have it over like that? Or
Yep, but now you don't want to go past this point where it's accelerating. So now, so you've had your hands like this, right?
Yeah.
You've been sanding. Then when you get to here, you don't want to be sanding anymore.
No,
but what you can do is now move that hand to there. And now we can continue to sand, yeah? We never want our hand over here, because all that's going to do is just push that down way too much. So essentially what you're doing is using the splines, you're trying to get this surface correct, right? Trying to get everything running through beautifully. But then this is going to put some nice big scratches in the surface. So then you need to, once you've got the surface correct, you need to change your mentality. You're now using Durablocks, something a bit softer, and you're now still being careful with guide coat, but you're now trying to blend all these surfaces together and you're trying to get rid of your scratches. So think about it as, this is your panel beater's tool, trying to get it correct. This is your spray painter's tool, trying to get it ready for the next coating. So there has to be that distinct stage between, all right, I'm trying to find highs and lows, and then once that's over, you're now no longer worried about that. You're trying to get the scratch profile correct. So in this, it's probably taken it through 240 to get it ready for a normal 2K primer, and that's where you'll be using the softer Durablocks or the final blocks or a product like that. Super important. At this stage, you're taping lines like this. At this stage, you're now blending them all through together. As soon as you're onto this, if you see any more highs and lows, you're either going, I'm living with it, or you're moving back to this. I'd probably focus on, getting this rectangle done. Wait till you've got a few fills. Like you can still sand here a bit more. But there's no use mixing up filler just to do one fill. You might as well wait till you've got a fair few.
And then do all one.
You're very close to having this surface correct and this surface correct, right? Then we've got to tackle this one. Now the correct way to tackle it, we've got to take a hell of a lot of product out of here because we're positive through there. What we're going to do is we don't want to sand that twice, right? You can see we've got this part here that's not fully sanded. You've got this part here that's not fully sanded. That's good. What we want to do, we want to focus on this area here, and then we want to slightly blend into that. So we're not double sanding anything. Okay, so you've done a good job working through that area, working through this. We can see we've got a slight low here. We've still got a little bit of a low here. This is the stage where I don't want to have to continue sanding all this down to meet that. There's a good chance we'll cut through. This is where I'd scuff that up with the orbital sander. No point, blocking it anymore. Scuff it up, and we do a little wipe with some filler to get that all running through now, using the same spline that we've used to sand it. Just do a little wipe through there. Then once it's gone hard, keep sanding, and now that'll flow through beautifully. Unfortunately, I do have to get going shortly, so I've left you the hardest part, which is this negative part through here. But breaking it up into these surfaces is really important to get it all flowing through.
Well, I just want to say massive thank you for coming down today and giving us a hand. Now, hopefully you guys took something out of this. Lincoln does have a course that is coming up soon, if you want to mention something about that.
So there's one next month in Thomastown. We spend 7 hours talking about the splines, how the created how we're using these for filler applications, sanding, and most importantly as a checking tool to be able to see the highs and lows. There's a couple of spots left, but yeah, jump on Melomotive website if you're interested.
Obviously checking out where all the lows and highs are, it's a massive advantage of having this spline. Yeah, we're gonna end it here with Lincoln, and I'll continue this when he's off, but yeah, thanks for giving us some tips, so now I know what I'm doing.
Looking great, well done.
Cheers. Massive thank you to Lincoln for giving us a hand and giving us a few tips with the sanding. I feel a lot more confident now, and I'm pretty keen to get stuck in to doing the rest of the sanding, but he has helped us out, and Melomotive have jumped on board. They've hooked me up with a set of splines for the tonner. These things are great. You can see all the lows and high spots, and they show up straight away, so big thank you to them. I'm super stoked. I just think they are really useful and definitely a great thing to have with this restoration. Already, from what I've done on the passenger side, I can already see that they are a massive help. Having these Melomotive splines is a bit of a game changer. I think we've taken this build to the next level with the bodywork, and having these splines is going to get us there. So just want to say massive thank you to Melomotive, and especially thank you to Lincoln for giving us his time. I thought it was quite interesting that he was saying that the HQ is one of the harder ones to get right, so I didn't actually know how technical these body lines were, so that is why he was showing us to get this yellow tape, because it is actually a negative curve all the way through here, and then it dips down. It's a bit more technical, but it's a nice challenge. We're gonna try our best. I started off having no idea what I was doing, but after a bit of practice and a bit of help, we got pretty good. The best thing about having the poly primer is that it's a lot thicker than your normal epoxies, which are normally thin. There's more material to sand, so you're not rubbing through to bare metal, and it's a really good thing to have when you're doing restos, because there's a lot of sanding that's involved, and if you want to bang on, you don't want to be rubbing straight through to bare metal, which means you have to prime and epoxy again, which is just a whole another process. So really happy with how these are going. The splines are working mint. I'm loving using these. Just done this side, and yeah, I'm really enjoying doing this. When I first did sanding last time, before we did the poly, I wasn't a massive fan, but yeah, I'm starting to like it a little bit more. So I'm gonna keep smashing this out. I'm getting pretty excited. We had this line with the tape that we've just peeled back to have the reference point of where that negative section is, the low swoop. The poly primer is really good because it's really glossy, and when you sand it back, you can see all the highs and lows, but that's another good benefit of having the poly primer. The next step will be getting ready for high fill, and then we'll sand that again, and then we'll get ready for body color. So body color is going to be a massive thing, and that's where it starts getting exciting. But the more effort you put in during the prep stages and doing all the sanding, the better the paint job will turn out. So we're putting in the hours because we want this to be bang on. I've had fun today. It's been good. Using the splines has been pretty fun to learn and get an idea on how to do it. I guess we wanted it to be sort of at a high standard, but I think now we've just upped it that little bit extra. So now that we've spent a full day, it means we're another step closer to getting this thing in body color. Now, obviously there's still many hours left to go before we can get to that stage, but it's getting really close now. That is enough sanding for today. We got most of it smashed out, and I'm really happy with how it all turned out. The splines are a massive help, so thank you, Lincoln, especially for teaching me how to use them. In one day, I already feel so much more confident with sanding the car. In the next couple of episodes,
we're gonna have some pretty exciting news to share. We got the color reveal coming up and we got the wheels. So make sure you guys subscribe and we'll catch you guys in the next one. Cheers. Oh, some sanding.